Hello, Graham Vincent, violin maker, musician. Tuesday, the something or other, 20 something or other of March. Lovely weather, it's really nice. I've been a little bit quiet for the last few days, and a couple of people have actually sent me messages saying everything okay, and yeah, everything is okay. I think in common with most people, the bit after Christmas always seems a bit dull and deflating. I had the Swiss guys here, as you know, and that was wonderful. Really enjoyed it, and I think on their departure, suddenly to find myself in my workshop on my own, it did actually feel a little bit quiet and despondent, I have to say. Last week I was looking around thinking my workshop is such a mess, and it was, yeah, I was a little bit fed up with it all actually. So over the weekend and yesterday, I've had a major tidy up in the workshop, which has put a whole new shine on things. The sort of weather's glorious at the moment, so that's all good. And shall I show you what I've been up to? I think this violin has been appearing in videos regularly, but it is slowly and inexorably moving forward. So anyway, this is the bog oak, 4,000-year-old bog oak fantasy violin that I'm making. So carving of the king's head, inspired very much from the Lewis Island sort of chessmen, including the rather fancy plaited hair, which I rather like, I have to say. Anyway, funny enough, this carving doesn't seem to come across well in photographs and videos. I've taken lots of pictures of it to try and show you what it looks like, and none of them look as good as it does in the flesh, actually, which is slightly frustrating for me, but hey, there we go. Yeah, so what have I been doing with this? Well, obviously the neck is on. I don't know if the neck was on last time you saw this. And in terms of neck shaping, what I've done is I've given it, let's put that against a background so you can see it. I've given that a slight curve. Do you see that? So that it's more akin to a sort of a Baroque neck. The angle is very much a classical kind of setup. So the bridge height will be classical. But I've given it this slight curve there, and I've put, in a Baroque style, I've put a wedge under the fingerboard, but it's quite a narrow wedge. It's not one of the great big thick ones that they used to have. So this is kind of 3/4 of the way to being a classical setup, but with a nod in the Baroque direction, if that makes sense. Because this is a fantasy piece. It's not historically accurate. But I want it to feel interesting and of an age, shall we say. Yeah, so what am I doing with this next? Well, we're getting dangerously close to the point where I need to start sort of sanding it up and then finishing it. This will be given a sort of a curing oil finish, so a very basic kind of finish, because that really suits this timber fantastically. So before then, I've got to, well, finish shaping the neck, because I mean most of the work on the neck is done, but it's still a little bit rudimentary, and certainly the work around the heel is not done, and the button is nowhere near to shape yet. So there's that to be done, and then sort of finessing this sort of area. Once that's done, I'll need to do things like, you know, make sure I've rolled off the edge of the fingerboard nicely and what have you. But and then obviously the rest of the body all needs to be sort of sanded, scraped, and all the rest of it. I've got to put the F-hole nicks into it, and these aren't just going to be the standard little nicks. They're going to be holes removed from the F hole and then connected up by a little slot, so they'll almost look like, what's the word for it? What's almost, you know, sort of, it'll almost look like the guard on a sword, if that makes sense. So I mean, yeah, I mean this is a bit of a fantasy piece, so I just quite like the idea of that anyway. But there we go. Oh, and then another thing I've done quite differently on this one to my normal approach, but this is an approach I've been thinking about for a while, because I mean, obviously with my violin making, I try and do this continual development, continual improvement. So I'm always, every time I do something, I look at it and think, what was good about that? What was bad about that? How am I going to improve it? And my peg boxes, generally they're okay, but I always look at the violin, often look at the violin afterwards and think, the peg box cheeks are really a bit chunky. There's a balance. You don't want them too thin because they're vulnerable, and that's gives a higher chance of them cracking under usage. You don't want that dreaded split coming from the A peg, And one thing you find in a lot of older violins is that the base of the peg box is one width, and then it sort of angles out quite steeply to give a nice thin look at the top. And I've been toying with the idea of moving slightly more in that direction. But then also, one of the things, if you, where I have made nice delicate peg box cheeks in the past, it gives you no wriggle room when you fasten the fingerboard on. So my plan on this one is basically that I've made the whole peg box the width that I want the bottom of the peg box to be. I've fastened on the fingerboard, and again I try and do the fingerboard as accurately as possible always. I use a pin at the top and a pin there, and it's all set up so that it's where I want it to be. But after the fingerboard is on, and then the neck is all shaped into the peg box, I'm going to revisit it, and where at the moment I've got this peg box which is square in section, I'm going to I can take the cheeks down. And of course, if you've got 0.5 millimeter in one direction or the other because of the way the gluing on of the fingerboard happened, if you've already set the thickness of the peg box, that really is difficult to disguise. That's not good at all. But 0.5 mil, and I'm not saying, I will try and work more accurately than that. But now with the fingerboard on, if I angle those peg box cheeks on the inside of the peg box, it doesn't matter if one of them is very slightly at a steeper angle than the other. You will not pick it up. So I think using this method, it means I can get a really nice, delicate peg box cheek. So yeah, that's my thinking. Also on this one, I might go down the route of actually relieving the bottom of the peg box a little bit, the bit near the nut, in that almost like a lute. So you've got the peg box cheek coming down, and then there's a scallop into it. I think I might just do that, just simply because that will be very much in keeping with the look of this thing. So there's that. Yeah, like I say, there's the sort of the heel, this area, the button, the edge of the fingerboard, and out the peg box, the F-hole nicks, and then it's really just down to scraping and just finalizing any rough bits and pieces. There's a little bit of work still needed on the F-holes, so I'll do that as well. Right, so I'm going to write a list, I think, of things to get on with in an effort to keep myself moving forward today rather than procrastinating, which is something I do incredibly well. So my list: finish shaping neck, heel button, yes. F-hole nicks, yep. Peg box, yep. Sanding and edge work, superb, yeah. So then tomorrow, Wednesday, start the finishing process. Yes, indeed. Make tailpiece. Well, I've already started on it, so yeah, I can get on with that. And it's going to be very baroque. I will just have a couple of holes through from the front. Do you know what? Actually, I might even go slightly strange and have 4 holes and do like a little crisscross pattern with the cord or something, just to give it a bit of interest. Because I mean, one thing I'll show you later on is I tend to double up the cord going around the end button, and what I normally do is have one loop straight and then the second one crossed over. So there's like a little, I can't really show, but there's the button there. So this comes over straight and then with one loop crossed. So it would sort of, if I do a sort of a cross pattern on the top in the cord as well, that would all tie in with that. Yeah, just thought of that. I'm going to do that. That'd be nice. A very Baroque style bridge. Yeah, then Thursday, carry on with the finishing. Then it's start the next violin, I think, Thursday. I've got, well, like 4 violins on order at the moment. But I think, in addition to maybe starting the first one of those, I might start 1 or 2 for myself to sell, because I'm doing things like the there's a traditional English fiddle day in Derbyshire. I will put a link in the description, so I'll be there at that one, and that's always a good day. So yeah, have a look at that. Okay, so I've kind of waffled enough. Now I think I need to get on with some work. So I'm working my way around on the heel at the moment, just getting everything right. I really want this to have a sort of a smooth, kind of time-worn kind of feel to it. If that makes sense. Sort of, that's kind of what the character of this design really calls out for. So work continues. I've actually just wetted the neck a little bit, in fact, just to get it to swell. Obviously that's going to be something that's going to be sanded back a few times. Yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm just actually, the back of the peg box is really rough, so I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to do the shape of the, widen out the peg box up front, and also sort of tidy up the nut, which is a bit rough at the moment. Okay, we're actually getting there quite well. I think first of all I might actually start with a bit of tidying up. Yeah, I've really got to get into the habit of tidying up as I go, because I mean I spent ages tidying up this weekend and already it's getting a bit out of hand, so right, well, yeah, we have. Oh, let's have some light on the subject, shall we? How's that? I wonder if you can see it. We've kind of reached the point where, because of the sort of finish I'm going to be using on this, I can actually move over to working with rubbing it with linseed oil and pumice. I think the actual shaping and everything, I believe, to be done. So, moving on. Well, so that's the end of a busy day. The violin is in the UV cabinet, having had a good sort of treatment with linseed oil and pumice and sort of worked over it a few times. So I'm going to leave it in the UV overnight, and then it'll be sort of same again tomorrow. Yeah, so anyway, that's it from me. I'll be back for more fun tomorrow, I suspect. Although I probably won't post it tomorrow, but you know what I mean. Okay, cheers folks, look after yourselves, bye.